A warm cheers and blessed day ahead to our dearest panelists. We are the researchers from the second year Bachelor of Secondary Education major in English. I am Charisse Doctor.
I am Aysson Calado.
Leila Fernandez.
I am Gemaima Pajarillo.
And Gemaima Catabay.
Our study is entitled
Effectiveness of Blended Learning on the English Proficiency of Grade 12 Students of Asbury College Incorporated, Academic Year 2020-2021.
Why did we select that particular title? As the pandemic began in the midst of the year 2019, the preparation for the academic year 2020 affected. This school year 2020-2021, the mode of learning was new normal due to the COVID-19 to secure the safety of the learners and educators. Distant learning through blended learning was molded. We, the researchers, select the title, The Effectiveness of Blended Learning on the English Proficiency of the Grade 12 Students of Asbury College Incorporated Academic Year 2020-2021 to determine the effectiveness of the newly implemented mode of learning of the respondents in their English proficiency. The topic we decided to study was about the effectiveness of blended learning on the English proficiency of the grade 12 in Asbury College Incorporated. We chose this topic because it is timely relevant to the present situation of the students. We focused on the English proficiency of the students because English language can draw a big impact of the academic improvement of the students.
So, what are the considerations in choosing this study? First thing we considered was the topic and the title itself. It is timely relevant to our situation wherein all are studying through distant blended learning. Some are modular and some are attending online classes. Second was our respondents, because grade 12 are the graduating students of senior high school. We, the researchers, aim to know their level of English proficiency through blended learning. This blended learning brought a different sagacity both to parents and teachers and especially to the students. In this study, we considered the present and the actual situation of grade 12 students in Asbury College Incorporated in this past school year. As the blended learning was implemented by the DepEd and the students, especially the grade 12, was engaged in modular and online platforms as their alternative way of learning, they have distinctive perception about this. Grade 12 students, as a prone and has an inclination in entering the higher level of education, we hold that they are the one who needed to excel in English proficiencies, and as the way of learning suddenly changed, we want to perceive how effective the blended learning into the improving their abilities in English.
This study reveals the condition of the students throughout using the online and modular mode of learning. The result of this study may showcase the needs of the students, respondents, toward improve of their English proficiency. This might be the indication to feel the inadequacy in learning, especially that the selected respondents are prerequisite to acquire English proficiency. This study can able to help them in some ways to suffice their English proficiency.
Let me discuss the summary of our background of the study. According to Lawrence Caroline in the year 2019, if you are familiar with e-learning in any way, there is no doubt you'll have heard about blended learning. It is a new concept that has risen in popularity over the last few years, with its advantages being lauded by e-learning professionals and learners alike. Despite the acceptance of the effectiveness of blended learning, there continues to be some ambiguity around its definition. So, just what is blended learning? Blended learning is defined as an alternative way of learning which combines the two ways of learning, which is the online mode of learning and modular mode of learning. It is commonly used by the students as in today's generation. According to Landberg, 2008, as the situation in this school year changed, many things were also changed, including the way of learning we had. Blended learning, which refers to online platforms of learning, and modular mode of learning made on tap as an alternative way of learning. Computer-assisted instruction is changing the pedagogical landscape as an increasing number of students are seeking online education. Colleges and universities are now touting the efficiencies of web-based education and are rapidly implementing online classes to meet students' needs worldwide. One study reported increases in the numbers of online courses given by universities have been quite dramatic over the last couple of years. With technological advancement, learners now want quality programs that they can access from anywhere and at any time. Because of these demands, online education has become a viable alluring option to business professionals, stay-at-home parents, and other similar populations. In addition to flexibility and access, multiple other face value benefits, including program choice and time efficiency, have increased the attractiveness of distance learning. Another alternative way of learning is modular learning. These days, there is a move toward modular approach to curriculum implementation. The approach has drawn a special attention in most nations' education system, particularly in technical and vocational education and higher education. The MOE, or the Ministry of Education, or Ethiopia, asserted that there has been an increasing focus on modular approach of learning in higher education institutions. Modular approach is an emerging trend educational thinking that shifts traditional method of instruction to an outcome-based learning paradigm. It sometimes confuses the students dealing with the answer sheets. Proficiency in English is usually defined by a combination of skill in reading, writing, listening, and speaking. These are measured by standardized and internationally recognized tests such as the TOEFL, or the Test of English as a Foreign Language, or the IELTS, or the International English Testing System, which are usually marked on advanced scores. The IELTS, with which I have been involved as an examiner for many years, has advanced score ranging from 0 to 9 and is required for residency, citizenship, job, college, and university eligibility purpose. There are many other tests, both formal and informal, which aim to determine in English proficiency, and that is according to Marie in the year 2019. The researchers observed that the education system in the Philippines changed since the coronavirus, or the COVID-19, spread throughout the country. The Department of Education implemented a new act, the Republic Act 10650, or the Open Distance Learning Act, that was signed by Aquino on December 9, and seeks to expand and further democratize access to quality education through the promotion and application of open learning as a philosophy of access to educational service. Hence, administration of the ASBURY College Incorporated believe that education is still possible despite of the threat of the COVID-19. So, the school comply with this new act by letting their students learn in their respective residence through blended learning, which comprises modular and online modalities. For now, modularization is one of the ways to continue their study aligned with the Open Distance Act. The teachers print bundles of modules, they distribute it, and by the end of the week, the student's parent or guardian will return it with the answer of their children. The process is continuously as the teacher prints new sets of modules that will be answered for the next week. On the other hand, the students and teachers also used online platforms such as Messenger app for clarification of the lesson, giving instructions and activities and announcements. The researchers select the respondents randomly in grade 12 students of ASBURY College Incorporated because they are the ones who use modular and online modalities. Also, they are graduating students and nearly enter higher education. The researchers are challenged and embark on the study because of the different factors such as the availability of the respondents, their willingness to cooperate, and poor internet connection to administer the survey through questionnaire. On top of this, the researchers are determined to finish their study because they believe that this study is helpful to the administrators, teachers, students, parents as well to the future researchers who will conduct a parallel study. Given the informations, the researchers intend to determine the effectiveness of both modular and online modalities on the student respondents' English proficiency.
This study aims to determine the effectiveness of blended learning on the English proficiency of the grade 12 in Asbury College Incorporated. This focuses how effective the modular and online platforms in lifting the English skills of the respondents.
There are 7 statements of the problem in this study. The statement of the problem number 1 focuses on the profile of the respondents in terms of the number of hours they spend in academic modules, the number of hours they spend in online platforms, socioeconomic status, and their level of motivation. The second SOP is the respondents' academic performance in English subject or their grade in English subject and second grading. The third SOP seeks about the proficiency skills of the students along subject-verb agreement, correct use of tenses, vocabulary, use of conjunctions, and reading comprehension. Next is the academic behavior of the grade 12 student on the effectiveness of blended learning. This refers to the behavior of the respondents toward conducting and using blended learning. The fifth SOP talks about the level of difficulty that the grade 12 students experiencing in blended learning. The sixth one is finding if there is a significant relationship between the profile, which are the number of hours they spend in academic modules, the number of hours they spend in online platforms, socioeconomic status, and their level of motivation to their academic performance of the respondents. The last SOP is determining if there is a significant relationship between academic performance of the respondents and their English proficiencies, which refers to the subject-verb agreement, correct use of tenses, vocabulary, use of conjunctions, and reading comprehension.
In this study, we use quantitative and descriptive methods. Aliaga and Gunderson 2002 have described the quantitative research methods very well. Relating to them, quantitative research is an inquiry into a sociable problem, describe phenomena by gathering numerical data that are analyzed using mathematically structured methods, in particular statistics, based on the Presswell 2003. Researcher is decided on example, cause and impact thinking, use of dimensions and observation, and test of juries. Uses strategies of inquiry such as experiment, surveys, and collects data on predetermined devices that yield statistical data. Descriptive research aims to accurately and systematically describe a population, situation, or phenomenon. It can answer what, where, when, and how questions, but not why questions. Unlike in experimental research, the researchers does not control or manipulate any of the variables, but only observes and measures them. According to Gay, 1992, descriptive research involves collecting data in order to test hypotheses or to answer questions concerning the current status of the subject of the study. A descriptive study determines and reports the way things are. The quantitative method of research is appropriate in this study because the researchers want to determine the effectiveness of blended learning on the English proficiency of the grade 12 student of Asbury College Incorporated. In the process of conducting this study, quantitative method appropriate because we use experiments, observation, and surveys to gather the needed data. We can also say that the descriptive research design is in a row because we are describing a certain population, and we can manipulate the gathered data.
So to determine the SOP number 1, which consists the profile of the students in terms of the number of hours spent in academic modules, number of hours spent in online platforms, socioeconomic status, and level of motivation, we use the frequency count and percentage. We assess the gathering data in number of hours spent in academic modules and number of hours spent in online platforms by using a survey questionnaire that vary through 3 options which were described as 0 to 2 hours, 3 to 4 hours, and 5 hours and above. In measuring in socioeconomic status of the respondents, we use the survey questionnaire that contains 4 choices, which are poor, low income, low middle income, middle income, and high income. In the last profile, which is the level of motivation of the respondents, we assess the gathering of data through survey questionnaire and may vary into 5 levels, which are highly motivated, motivated, slightly motivated, and least motivated and not motivated. In SOP number 2 was described through the use of mean and descriptive rating. Likert scale was also in use. In determining the academic performance of the respondents, we obtained their English grade and second reading respectively, and went through scaling to determine the descriptive equivalent of the respondents' grades. The grades 85 to 87 is equivalent to fair, 89 to 90 is good, 91 to 93 is satisfactory, 94 to 96 is high satisfactory, and 97 to 100 is equivalent to very high satisfactory. And SOP number 3, which is the level of proficiency skills along subject-verb agreement, correct use of tenses, vocabulary, use of conjunction, and reading comprehension, will be described using the mean and descriptive rating. We use our researchers-made questions consisting 10 items in every proficiency skill test. We derived the test questions from the 3 literary pieces, which are entitled The Safe House by Sandra Nicole Roldan, Allo Art by Margaret Atwood, and Lengua para Diablo or Devil Ate My Words by Merlinda Babis. After gathering the scores in tests, we use the scaling to determine the descriptive rating of respondents' proficiency skills. The scores 1 to 2 is equivalent to low proficiency, 3 to 4 is least proficiency, 5 to 6 is slightly proficiency, 7 to 8 is high proficiency, and 9 to 10 is very high proficiency. In SOP number 4, which is the respondent's academic behavior, will be described using mean and descriptive rating. Likert scale was also used to approach the result in scaling. Academic behavior will be measured through questionnaire and checklist varied into these options: always, often, sometimes, rarely, and never. Scaling will go through the following. The interval 1 to 4 is never, 5 to 9 is rarely, 10 to 14 is sometimes, 15 to 16 is often, and 17 to 20 is always. SOP number 5 is used through frequency count and percentage, and it is utilized to determine the level of difficulty of the students experiencing in blended learning. It is also measured through survey questionnaire and varied into these options: very difficult, difficult, slightly difficult, least difficult, and not difficult. SOP number 6 use chi-square, and it is also utilized by chi-square to determine the relationship between the academic performance and the proficiency skills of the students. SOP number 7 is the significant relationship between the profile of the students and the English proficiency. The chi-square will be utilized to determine the relationship between the profile and the proficiency skills of the respondents. The chi value will be compared to the tabular p value to determine if there is a significant relationship between every profile to the English proficiency.
Table 1.A, profile of the respondents in terms of numbers of hours spent in academic module. The table reveals that the majority of the respondents, or the 60% of them, spend 5 hours and above reading and answering academic modules within a day. The result indicates that the study of School of Creative Art is highly related, that a 15-credit module is expected to involve 150 hours of study. A 30-credit module is 300 hours, 45-credit module is 450 hours, and a 60-credit module is 600 hours. Most undergraduate modules are either 15 or 30 credits. Table 1.b. The profile of the respondents in terms of numbers of hours spent in online platform. The table reveals that the majority of the respondents, or the 40% of them, spend 5 hours and above using online platform within a day. The result corroborates the study of Andrew Perrin and Jingjing Jiang 2018. The typical students spend about half that amount of time, between 1 and 2 hours, on social media, or 37% of students, and streaming video, or 36% of respondents. About a third of students, or 32%, spend less than 1 hour per day on other online activities. Table 1.c. The profile of the respondents in terms of socioeconomic status. The table reveals that the socioeconomic status of the respondents is mostly poor. This table emphasizes that the latest family income and expenditure survey by the Philippine Statistics Authority, or the PSA, shows that the majority, or the 58.4% of Filipinos, belongs to the poor. Table 1.d. Profile of the respondents in terms of level of motivation. The table reveals that the majority of the respondents, or the 45% of them, are highly motivated. The result of this study correlates the study of International Journal. They stated that it is important to understand learners' motivation and identify whether the instructional materials can motivate or demotivate students. However, there are relatively few studies that address learners' motivation level in the newly emerged massive open online courses setting. Table 2. Profile of the respondents in terms of academic performance in English. The table reveals that the average grade of the respondents got a mean score of 94.75 and described as high satisfactory. That was indicated in the scaling in Chapter 3. It is therefore helpful to contextualize the subject to appreciate the relatively young and constantly changing nature of current systems of grading. Table 3. Respondents' level of proficiency skills. The table shows that the level of proficiency skills of the respondents along subject-verb agreement, correct use of tenses, vocabulary, use of conjunctions, and reading comprehensions get an overall weighted mean of 9.25, interpreted as very high proficiency that was indicated in the scaling in Chapter 3. This corroborates the article written by Christina Eloisa Baclid 2020, that despite the drop in rankings, the country received a high proficiency level in the English language. Based on scores gathered from last year's tests, the Philippines got 562 out of 700. This means that Filipinos are able to make a presentation at work, understand TV shows, and read newspapers. Table 4. Respondents' academic behavior in blended learning. The table reveals that the academic behavior of the student in blended learning got an overall weighted mean of 17.1, interpreted as always, that was indicated in the scaling in Chapter 3. The result of this study correlates the study of Yaptisay and Akbayin. Blended learning model encourage students to learn more actively. They have opportunity to learn on their own pace. They can prepare themselves for the course before coming to the class, and it can realize student-centered learning and reflect the value of 21st century education. Table 5. Respondents' level of difficulty experiencing in blended learning. The table reveals that the level of difficulty of their grade 12 students experiencing blended learning was scaled 3 with 45% and interpreted as difficult, that was indicated in the scaling in Chapter 3. The results corroborates the study of Education Secretary Leonor Briones in an online presser on March 22, explained some possible reasons why blended learning is more difficult practically for everyone. Table 6.8. Relationship of the respondents' number of hours spent in academic module and English proficiency. The computed chi value is 32.28 tested and 0.05 level of significance, which is greater than the tabular p-value of 30.14. Therefore, the hypothesis is rejected. This study implies a statement in Infogram 2021. There is a positive correlation between the numbers of hours and the student spent studying with the grade the student earns on exams. The more time a student spends studying, the higher you would expect the student's grade to be. The table implies that there is a significant relationship between numbers of hours spent in academic module and English proficiency of the students. Table 6b. Relationship of the respondents' numbers of hours spent in online platforms and English proficiency. The computed chi-value is 27.92, tested in 0.05 level of significance, which is lesser than the tabular p-value of 30.14. Therefore, the hypothesis is accepted. This table proves the research in Jack and Jane College that the students were engaged in online activities in a typical day. Overall, and many students said they devote more time to homework and research online than they do to social media, streaming video, gaming, or other online activities academic. The table implies that there is no significant relationship between number of hours spent on online platforms and English proficiency of the students. Table 6.c. Relationship of the respondents' socioeconomic status and English proficiency. The computed chi-value is 11.59, tested in 0.05 level of significance, which is lesser than the tabular p-value of 30.14. Therefore, the hypothesis is accepted. This table emphasizes that the social status do not affect the achievement and happiness at the individual level, and academic performances, and it depends on the motivation of the student to determine the potentiality of the development of the nation. The table implies that there is no significant relationship between socioeconomic status and English proficiency of the students. Table 6.d. Relationship of the respondents' level of motivation and English proficiency. The computed chi-value is 31.14, tested in 0.05 level of significance, which is greater than the tabular p-value of 30.14. Therefore, the hypothesis is rejected. These findings implies the study that the motivation is distinguishable from general cognitive functioning and helps to explain gains in achievement independent of scores on intelligence tests. It is also distinguishable from states related to it, such as engagement, interest, goal orientation, grit, and tenacity, all of which have different antecedents and different implications for learning and achievement. The table implies that there is a significant relationship between level of motivation and English proficiency of the students. Table 7. Relationship of the respondents' academic performance and English proficiency. The computed chi-value is 32.69, tested in 0.05 level of significance, which is greater than the tabular p-value of 30.14. Therefore, the hypothesis is rejected. According to Genus 2015, he stated that the higher the English proficiency of the students on entry to the university, the better they perform in their degree area courses as well as in their English levels. The table implies that there is a significant relationship between the academic performance and the English proficiency of the students.
For the summary of our study, the significant findings of this study were the following. Along the profile of the Asbury College Incorporated senior high school students, first semester academic year 2020-2021, it was revealed that number 1.8, the number of hours spent in academic modules gained a 12 frequency or 60% of 5 hours and above. Number 1B, the number of hours spent on online platform gained 8 frequency or 40% of 5 hours and above. Number 1C, the level of socioeconomic status of the respondents is poor, which gained a 9 frequency or 45%. 1.B, the level of motivation of the respondents is highly motivated, which gained a 9 frequency or 45%. Number 2 is the diagnosis of academic performance in English of the respondents gained an overall weighted mean of 94.75, interpreted as high satisfactory. Number 3 is on the level of proficiency skills of the students. It was found that the result of the survey has a descriptive rating of very high proficiency because most of the students are at high proficient level of competence. 3.8, the level of English proficiency of the respondents in terms of subject-verb agreement, which got a mean score of 8.95, interpreted as high proficiency. 3.5 is the level of English proficiency of the respondents in terms of correct use of tenses, which got a mean score of 9.05, interpreted as very high proficiency. 3.C, the level of English proficiency of the respondents in terms of vocabulary, which got a mean score of 9.2 and is interpreted as very high proficiency. 3.D is for the level of English proficiency of the respondents in terms of the conjunctions, which got a mean score of 9.95, interpreted as very high proficiency. 3.E is for the level of English proficiency of the respondents in terms of the reading comprehension, which got a mean score of 9.1 and interpreted as very high proficiency. Number 4 is for the level of academic behavior of grade 12 students on the effectiveness of blended learning, which got an overall weighted mean of 17.1, interpreted as always. Number 5, the level of difficulty that the grade 12 students experiencing in blended learning is difficult, which gained a 9 frequency or 45%. For the conclusion of our study, based on the significant findings of this study, the following conclusions are drawn. 9.8, there was significant relationship between number of hours spent in academic modules and English proficiency of the students. 9.B, there was no significant relationship between number of hours spent in online platforms and English proficiency of the students. 9.C, there was no significant relationship between socioeconomic status and English proficiency of the students. 9.D, there was significant relationship between level of motivation and English proficiency of the student. Number 10, there was significant relationship between academic performance and English proficiency of the students. For the recommendation of our study, from the conclusion drawn, the following recommendations are suggested. 1A, engage the students more in reading and academic modules so that it can help them discover the purpose and benefits of reading, specifically to develop their English proficiency. 1B, exposure to online platforms should be neutrally observed because it can either develop or retrogress their English proficiency. 1C, school should include one or more measures of socioeconomic status to account for individual differences in endowments and prior achievement, in particular when analyzing the relationship between achievement and schooling variables. 1D, help the student motivate to maintain or increase their level of English proficiency. Number 2 is engage the students to participate in class discussion to maintain the academic performance. Number 3 recommendation is English proficiency should be considered in academic grades in English because the subject requires English proficiency in subject-verb agreement, correct use of tenses, use of conjunctions, vocabulary, and reading comprehension. 4th, help the student improve their academic behavior by applying 10 tips to improve child behavior in class to achieve the effectiveness towards blended learning. 5th, provide a space for learning to those students who are experiencing difficulties and blended learning.
That ends our presentation and thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hindi naman mababa. Ilan yun? Ilan? May 34 lang.
Kailangan ba wala?
Hindi naman.
Naman.